The final session. We left the best for last. A sigh of relief. I know this has been a crash course for everybody who's here and has been watching, but we believe you got people in a room. You want to fill them with everything you can because it's a busy, important time. And as you've heard, Senator Cassidy, everyone here wants to get stuff done. So I'm so excited to have the opportunity to spend a few minutes talking about what your goals are. You woke up the day after the election realizing that you were likely to be the majority to be able to run the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, HELP. So, Senior Senator from the great state of Louisiana, what are you thinking? What do you think the biggest challenges you're going to face in the 119th Congress? What can you tell us that can prepare us for some of what you heard tonight?
There's always, by the way, thank everybody for still hanging in there for the very last session. They say the best for last. I always think they save the worst because most people are going home. You got to take advantage of the opportunity. Just sitting here listening to people, there are so many ideas about innovation, awareness of the challenges, hope for the future in this room. How do we translate that into public policy, then use the process, the publicity, and the politics to actually get it passed into law? There's a lot of people who feel incredibly threatened by what you represent. A lot of folks. And for us to be successful, we have to work together.
Well, that's a great segue. You had, back in September, you held a roundtable on K-12 innovation, and we were fortunate to have a number of people who represent in this room, awardees of the OST Prize and Stop Awards Initiative, come and chat with you. And people thought that was kind of odd. Like, what are we going to go tell them on Capitol Hill? We work in the States, as you're hearing. But it sounds like you took a lot away from that. What were some of your takeaways, and what stood out to you the most? Why was that important for them to come up there?
We live in a representative democracy. If you're not building the case for what your viewpoint is, whoever you are, then you are not being represented. Not because the representative does not want to represent, because she or he may not know. Now, it was an opportunity for my colleagues and I to listen to people who are here, Crystal Ray and Great Hearts. We had online charters. We had, I think it's Victory VR, about how you use virtual reality to kind of allow a child who's never been away from his hometown to see the mountains of Switzerland. We had Alabama
Aerospace. Right?
Aerospace, talking about the obstacles they faced. I was speaking to Steve Hardy earlier tonight about the obstacles he faced. My wife has a public charter school for children with dyslexia. I'm aware of the obstacles she faced. If you're not communicating that to your representative doesn't know that, and they don't know how to help you break down those obstacles. And so when I say if we're going to get it done, we've got to get it done.
You mentioned dyslexia, and we've learned so much from Dr. Cassidy about the challenges students face. You've heard a lot of folks here serving underserved kids. You mentioned once before that you thought maybe there was a role for the federal government to play in helping parents of students with dyslexia specifically, or maybe even more generally in terms of special needs. What do you see as the potential? So be as radical as you want.
So first, I'm not going to assume that everyone understands dyslexia. My wife's in the audience, and inevitably I get something wrong. So baby, forgive me in advance. But just for those who don't know, normally intelligence and reading ability track very closely. The statistician would say the R-square is very tight. And so the bright child reads well. A child of medium intelligence reads kind of medium well. You kind of go, but it tracks. In dyslexia, a child has what is called an unexpected deficiency in reading. So the bright child doesn't read very well. And it can be incredible. In fact, 20% of the population is affected, 1 out of 5. That means 20% of us in this room are affected. And many, if you're in this room, you overcame it. And in this room, you had parents, or you had the intelligence, or you had something that allowed you to supersede that. But there's a lot of kids, that's not the case. So again, Laura went into one of our prisons, state prisons in Louisiana, and I used to treat patients, I'm a doctor, used to treat patients in prison, and the unholy triad of incarceration, no father figure, involvement with drugs, and you can't read. You put those three together, somebody quite likely is going to end up incarcerated. And so she surveyed, she screened and identified that whereas the normal prevalence in the population of dyslexia is 20%, in the state prison it's 50%. And that makes sense. If inability to read is a major risk factor for incarceration, and dyslexia is the leading risk factor for being unable to read, you're going to have an overrepresentation. Now, that's the context. So, one thing that federal government can do is, one, we're trying to get the definition of dyslexia into federal law. Right now, dyslexia is included with specific learning disorder, a definition, a catch-all in 1975, the definition, it has everything but autism. You name it. Mental retardation, as an example. Brain injury, as an example. So kind of physical things, as well as dyslexia. Imagine if you went to a doctor and you had cancer, or I'm a doctor, a gastroenterologist. So you go to your gastroenterologist and you say, I have belly pain. And the doctor said, here's a pill, see you later. Like, don't you think it would be nice if the doctor said, well, wait a second, where does it hurt? Does it hurt more when you eat or less when you eat? Is it associated with nausea? Have you been losing weight? Is there a change in your bowel habits? On, and I could get more and more gastroenterology. But the point being is that we now can differentiate using tools what one type of belly pain is compared to another. And how we treat that belly pain depends upon the type you have. With SLD, we just say, oh my gosh, we got this whole group of specific learning disorders, and we're going to classify them the same. It's 1975 definition being applied in 2024. It is almost a metaphor for some aspects of the educational establishment. And what we're trying to do is pull dyslexia out of that so it can be treated on its own, so the interventions for this 20% of the population who's at increased risk for incarceration is specific to these children and not just kind of a grab bag if that's what you would do for people with SLD.
So that's fascinating, and it's something that I didn't know specifically, so I just learned something, and so important that people understand it. Let me go a little deeper on federal policy. At one point in time, and I'm pretty sure this is still the case, you as a traditional public school district, if you qualify someone for an IEP or any kind of learning disability or any level under IDEA, you get more money, right? Makes sense. You get more money. But there's no, so more and more school districts over time would qualify more and more students in this general box to get more money per student, right? And yet their ability to actually treat that or serve that student is not necessarily dependent on how much they get. So you had this overage of funding for IDEA, money going to schools and school districts that don't necessarily do what Louisiana Key and others in this room do. How do we fix that?
So, first you got to break it out, okay? Now, so you're asking, I think, a more general question. If there's dollars coming to treat specific disabilities, how do you make sure the dollars are used more effectively? Well, Jeanne, do you want my job? I think what you're really asking is a part of a broader question. How do we get accountability for the dollars that the federal government sends down to the state and local level? And I hope to be the chair of the HELP committee, and I hope to bring that accountability. Now, by the way, we live in a representative democracy. If I don't hear from you, if I don't hear that story, if I don't have those statistics and facts, then we cannot provide oversight. We cannot bring accountability. We cannot then make the changes. So I'll just say that for things like that and other things in this audience, we need you. By the way, just to call her out, where is Ann? Ann is over there, and if you see her waving her arm, she is available 24/7. Christmas Eve, give her a call. You know what I'm saying? But she is my lead person on education on the help committee, and she's been handing out her cards all night. You really should reach Ann because that helps us learn from you.
And you've said that many times before, and it's not something you normally hear from United States senators or members of Congress, which is, please come talk to us. Please come tell us. We need to hear the parent voice. We need to hear the grassroots. It is so refreshing to hear that. I mean, when I was cutting my teeth on Capitol Hill, I was like, don't tell them anything. You want to stay far away. You better come prepared with your big groups, associations, and lobbyists. So help us bring that perspective even more. When they come up, when they reach out to Anna, when they have messages and things to say, what is the best way for them to be effective? What's the do's and don'ts that you think would help empower them to be better advocates to support what you're trying to get done?
I'll give you my Lobby Congress 101, because the congressman, the congresswoman, the senator is really nothing but the hired help, as Will Rogers said. And so we're here to serve. So I would say, you know you're going to have 15 minutes. It may be with a member, it may be with the member staff, but it's 15 minutes. You go in, and ideally you have a personal connection. Jeanne knows my wife. She would walk in and say, hey, I'm here with Laura. I love Laura. I've seen Laura so much. So you establish that personal connection. Each of you is connected to an elected official by one or two means of separation. You know somebody that can get you to them, and some of you know them personally. So you go in, you got 15 minutes. After you say hello, boom, hit your issue. Don't kill 10 minutes of the 15 talking about the Little League ball clubs that your children pay on. Say, thank you for seeing us. This is what our issue is. Have a piece of paper. This is the funding level. We can see that the Department of Education under the Biden-Harris administration has made it so difficult for charters to apply for this funding that they've stopped applying for the funding. And we can show you the graph where they were applying, and then under Biden-Harris, because of the rule changes, they no longer are. That's fact, by the way. Now, we have a proposed solution. It's always wonderful if you have a proposed solution. Here's the language which has been drafted. Can we leave it with you? Now, we're getting others to sign on. Can we follow up with you a week from now to see if you have questions? Can I have Ann's phone number or her email address? Okay, and we'll follow up. Thank you so much. And if we can ever support you, let us know. That last line is helpful because that person wants to get reelected. If they're taking a tough stand for you, somebody's coming after them. They're just coming after them if they take a tough stand for you. So just let them know you'll be with them in the foxhole, and they'll be with you in the foxhole. That is 101. We should do some role play one day.
We should do that. It's such sage advice. We heard in an earlier panel a discussion about the fact, and that was Governor Ducey and Governor Paulus with Randall Lane, how obviously the lion's share of education, the lion's share of the money is at the state level. There's only a certain amount of money at the federal level. We understand. It's IDEA, it's Title I, it's all sorts of Christmas trees and other programs, some good, some questionable. But it dawned on me and a number of people in the audience during the discussion that while we minimize what the federal government has the money to do, there's an enormous amount of power attached to each dollar that ends up in the strings. So it might be in the strings. So it might only be 10% of funding overall, 8 to 10%, but it's like 50 to 60% of the impact of regulation. Any solutions you have for that or with the next administration?
I liked one of the state senators who was I liked them all. That was a fantastic panel we just had. My communications guy was back there scribbling down their quotes saying, hey, you're going to use this one. But he talked about how this administration, the Trump-Vance administration, he used the word chaos in a positive way. In a positive way. I would say they're not beholden to the status quo. And if there's one strength that Donald Trump has, that guy will break an egg. That guy will take a carton of eggs and slam them upside down. Now, if we're looking at an educational establishment, which is pretty much the same way it was when I was in elementary school in 1963, 64, maybe it could deserve some broken eggs. And I think that there's going to be a real opportunity to promote innovation, school choice, other avenues to give the parent the power to choose the best possible education for her child. There is great promise in this administration, and I am looking forward to working with them.
So you are a sponsor of a bill that would bring the federal government into supporting school choice in a very different way than we've thought about for a long time. Talk about the Invest in Ed.
Yeah, I always got to look at my abbreviations. It's the educational choice. John, where are you, man? You can give me what my ECCA stands for. But it would be a tax credit allowing some to fund the private or parochial education, the Educational Choice Act, the private or parochial education for kids of a certain income level to allow them to go to the private or parochial school of their choice. And during COVID, it's all kind of got born out of that. Public schools shut down, would not open, couldn't open. And the parochial and the private were open. And the parents whose kids were imprisoned, so to speak, and the school would not open, could only look over the fence at the schools that were open. And then the Educational Choice Act, for kids of a certain income, middle income, lower, it would allow them to have the educational opportunity to go to the school of their parents' choice, not just look over the fence.
Exactly, and the parent would get a federal tax credit.
Correct.
To be able to do that towards a scholarship program. So it's not federal money, right? And it's not coming directly out of your taxes, but it's funding that you would give like a private scholarship program, get a tax credit so more students could go to schools.
And it would not be for a, ritzy private school. It wouldn't be for Choate. I hope I'm not offending anybody from Choate. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It would be for kind of the school that middle income and lower income kids could go to if only their parents had a little help.
But that's going to be a battle, even if the members who like that more than others are in the majority. It's going to be a battle because not all Republicans love education choice. They have people fighting them at home, and not all Democrats are opposed to it, but they're maybe not going to come out and do that. So talk about that battle. I mean, we've both been watching a long time. We've seen this movie before. How do we make sure that fight wins this time?
Because of you, the one-on-one we had on how you lobby, of people who come up here and knock on the door and say, can I have 15 minutes of your time?
With all the unions on the other
what?
side, with the unions on the other side.
So the unions are on the other side, but there is the power of mamas is incredible. Now, dads, I'm a dad. I'm a granddad now. No offense to any of you, but usually it's the mama making the decisions about health care and about the child's education. And I can tell you, you get committed mothers knocking on a door, and that resonates. The power there is incredible. And so I would just challenge people to use that power. It's for your child, and it's for a lot of children that are to come.
Last question for you. You've been so generous with your time. Are you excited, and are you expecting to spend a lot more time in Washington potentially overseeing a committee?
Yeah, so it's not definite yet, but hopefully I'll be the chairman of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee. My chairman this Congress, since Republicans in the minority, is Senator Bernie Sanders, a nice man. But we had only one hearing on primary and secondary education. And I think like we are the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, so we should do a little bit more on education. And that'll be an emphasis of mine. And I am incredibly excited about it. Earlier on the panel, State Senator spoke about the importance of education. I was sitting there thinking, give me the better educated, you have better health outcomes. Better educated, you have better economic outcomes. Better educated, more likely to stay married. Better educated, more likely to have a two-parent family. Better educated, I could go down the list of positive things. Education is the key to a brighter future. And Patricia, I think, from Friendship Academy, talking about education, and that along the same line. If we can work together to with that key, unlock the brilliance of these children's future, we've done our job.
If we can work together to unlock the key, the brilliance of these kids, we've done a good job. Excellent way to end our summit. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Jeanne.
Senator Cassidy. We're so grateful for your time.
Thank you.